The electric mobility has entered the mass market, and we at Fronius, we want to make sure that you are not only part of it, but you play in the first role for installing electric mobility solution. I welcome you to our launch event today at our Fronius launch event for our new electric mobility solution, our Fronius Wattpilot. Today, we will show you our new e-mobility solution, the new Fronius Wattpilot. Here we have it. It's our mobile and stationary solution for charging up electric vehicle at the most cost-efficient way. My name is Michael Raunig, and together with my colleague Hans Pelzer, we will guide you through this live session today and introduce the new e-mobility solution in the name of the whole company Fronius. So therefore, we have planned for you a very good program. We will show you different features of the Wattpilot and of course, give you an overview about the most important functionality and how it is possible for you to charge up your electric vehicle at the best cost-efficient way. So please sit still and take with us this event to show you our new e-mobility solution. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to use our chat function and ask us these questions, and we will then try to answer your questions directly in the chat, or even after the webinar, we will contact you via email. Okay, so now let's start up with the first agenda of this webinar. I want to introduce you, first of all, the team. This is my colleague Hans Pelzer and me, Michael Raunig, and we will do the webinar for you today. Okay, so what's on the agenda today? First of all, we will start with the Fronius Wattpilot with our basic variants. So first of all, we're going to talk about the two different variants. We have the Fronius Wattpilot Go variant. This is the mobile solution when you want to take the charger with you, have it with you in your car. And then we have a second opportunity. We have the Wattpilot Home. And this is really the stationary solution where you have the possibility to install it fixed at your house. Next up are then the Fronius Wattpilot functionality, and there we want to give you an overview about what the specific functionalities of the Wattpilot are, like, for example, of course, the charging with the PV surplus energy. And second up, we have the possibility to charge with flexible energy tariffs. So with that functionalities, we make sure that the customer always gets the cheapest and economical possible charge for his electric car. After that, we want to give you a demonstration of our standalone app. We have developed our own software for the Wattpilot. And of course, we want to show you that as well as some accessories for the Wattpilot so that you can order extra. Yeah, after that, we will go with you through the charging modes. So with our Fronius Wattpilot, there comes two specific charging modes. And this is one on one side, the Eco mode, and on the other hand side, the Next Trip mode. So with these two charging modes, the customer can freely decide how he wants to charge, when he wants to charge, and at what cost he wants to charge. Yeah, last but not least, we have some availability and timeline for you. So there we will show you when you can order the Wattpilot. So let's start with the Fronius Wattpilot with the basic variants. So first of all, here you can see it in the presentation. We have our Fronius Wattpilot. This is then our product. As you see, it is a very mobile solution, as you can see here with the device, very end customer friendly, of course. And the big topic is with the mobile solution, with the Fronius Wattpilot Go, the customer can even decide that he takes the Wattpilot with him in the car, for example. And also with the Wattpilot Home variant, he can decide to install it fixed at his house. So however you do it, you have a very mobile, very sleek solution. It is a very small box, as you see, also very lightweight. And therefore, the installation process, of course, is very easy. Okay, so for the different variants, we have the Wattpilot Go and the Wattpilot Home. So with the Wattpilot Go, we have two different power stages. So therefore, we have the Wattpilot 11J. So the 11 in this case stands for 11 kilowatt. So this is the first device. And the second is then the 22 device. That stands for 22 kilowatt of maximum charging power. The J in this case stands for the jack. So in the front of the Wattpilot, you have the possibility to come with a Type 2 jack and connect the car with the charging station. So therefore the J is there. And then we have the Wattpilot Home variant. And with this Home variant, we also have an 11 kilowatt device. So you can charge up to 11 kilowatts with that device. And this is then stationary in your garage. So therefore, here you can see we can charge with 6 up to 16 amps for the 11 kilowatt device. And for the 22 kilowatt device, we can charge with 6 up to 32 amps of charging power. And the beauty of the Wattpilot now is that you can use this full scope of power. So in this case, the Wattpilot can charge either single phase, two phase, or three phase. So you can use the full 6 up to 32 amps of charging power. And you can also switch the phases. So depending if you're choosing a car with single phase, with two phase, or three phase, this is of course not a problem. You can charge whatever car you connect to it. Yeah, and with the Wattpilot Home, you just get a device with a fixed installation cord. So there is a 2-meter connection cable on it, and therefore you can install the Wattpilot fixed to your house. Okay, then we are talking about the standard scope of delivery. So with the Wattpilot, there now comes a different scope of delivery that you get delivered within the box. First of all, of course, you get the standard Wattpilot device. And second up, you get our wall mounting plate. So with the wall mounting plate, you have now the possibility to just mount the Wattpilot to the wall. So in this case, if you have the Wattpilot mounted to the wall itself, you can just unplug it from the wall, and therefore you have your mounting plate to the wall, and therefore you can easily mount the Wattpilot to the wall. And even if you're using it as a mobile device, you can just take it from the wall and then take it with you. And of course, when you return home, you can just plug it back to the wall again. You just snap it in, and therefore you can have it really as a mobile device, and also can have it at different locations available. So this is the wall mounting bracket. And second up, we have in the standard scope of delivery, we have our RFID tags. So with this RFID tags, you can use them as a key to authentication on the Wattpilot itself. So whenever you want to install the Wattpilot at a public or semi-public place, you want to make sure that nobody else but you can charge with the station. So therefore, you can use this RFID tag and go directly to the device and make your authentication in front of the Wattpilot. So you can learn up to 10 of these RFID chips to the Wattpilot and then give access to different persons who should be able to charge with the RFID tag. Okay, and then we have, of course, our RFID reset card. This is also part of the standard scope of delivery. And with that reset card, you can reset the Wattpilot to its standard settings. So whenever you want to reset the Wattpilot, you just go to the Wattpilot, put it to the device, and then you can reset the Wattpilot to standard settings. Furthermore, for connecting and making the commissioning on the device, there are also written down on the card the password for the Wi-Fi access point. So whenever you give AC power to the Wattpilot, then you have your standard SSID, and then you can connect with the app to the Wattpilot and make your commissioning. And the access data is also written on that card. Okay, then with the standard scope of delivery, there comes also the quick start guide. So with our quick start guide, we have then the possibility to have a very easy installation and commissioning process within one card. So here you can see the whole installation process. You can see the whole commissioning process via the Fronius Wattpilot app. And you see the installation process is very easy. All you need to do basically is to mount the device to the wall, connect it to the AC grid, to your socket or to the fixed installation. And then, of course, you can instantly charge your car. Also, the commissioning via the mobile app is here described. So when you want to do the commissioning on the app, this is a very easy process and also described on the quick start guide. After that, we also have a theft protection on the Wattpilot. And for the theft protection, I want to show you here directly on the wall. For the theft protection, we have now here our metal bracket, and this metal bracket can be installed next to the cable. So whenever you have your Wattpilot installed in a public or semi-public place, you want to make sure that nobody can unplug the device and take it away. And to avoid this theft protection, you can just install this metal bracket here. And with that metal bracket, you can just mount a little lock, a padlock to it. And then you can make sure that nobody can remove the Wattpilot from the wall. So this is our first theft protection that we have here. Please make sure, however, the padlock is not included in the Wattpilot, just the metal bracket for installing the padlock is included. So this is the first theft protection, and the second theft protection is then our Type 2 plug. And with the Type 2 plug, you can make sure that nobody can unplug the Type 2 cable. So when you come with your Type 2 cable, this is such a Type 2 cable, and when you connect it to the Wattpilot, you can configure it in the settings that the Type 2 cable can't be plugged off after charging ends. So during charging, the Type 2 cable, of course, is locked to the station. And after the charging process, you can define that the Type 2 cable is still locked in place and therefore can't be removed by external people. So here you see we have two different theft protections available. Okay, so this is the standard scope of delivery. And then for the accessories, I want to show you our accessories that are available with the Wattpilot. So with the accessories, you can order a Type 2 cable. So this is then a 5-meter Type 2 cable that you can see here, also in the Fronius design. So you can order extra Type 2 cable. This is a 5 meters, 32 amps cable with up to 22 kilowatts of charging power. So especially when you charge with the Wattpilot Go 22 kilowatts, you can use the full power with this cable because it is then coded to 22 kilowatts of power. Next up, we have orderable 10 pieces of these ID chips. So whenever you want to order more of these ID chips, that's not a problem. They are orderable as 10 pieces, and then you can learn up to 10 of these ID chips to the Wattpilot for making sure that the customers that you have or the people that should have access to the Wattpilot, that they have it with these ID chips. So one ID chip is included in the standard scope, and you can order accessible to that 10 packs of these ID chips. Yeah, then you can order also an additional mounting plate. So whenever you want to install the Wattpilot at different places, let's say you have one house where you want to charge, and then you take it as a mobile device with you and want to mount it there also to the wall, then you can order an additional mounting plate. For charging as a mobile solution, we have then two different adapter sets. As you know, when we have a mobile device, you want to make sure that wherever you are, that you can charge. And for making sure that you can charge wherever you are, all you need basically is a plug. So all you need is a wall socket where you connect and where there's electricity on. And therefore, we have our adapter sets. So for every device, for the 11 kilowatt device, as well as for the 22 kilowatts device, we have now a different adapter sets. And with these adapter sets, you can connect to whatever plug you find. So wherever you are, you can make sure that you can plug in there. So these adapter sets, they now include always the adaptation from your Wattpilot. So in this case, we start with the 22 kilowatt device. And there we have, of course, a 32 amp CE red plug. And with this coupling, you can now adapt from the Wattpilot, from the 22 kilowatt Wattpilot with the 32 amp socket, you can directly connect to a socket of the wall mounting. So whenever you find, for example, a CE red 32 amp socket, you can directly connect the device to it. The first adaptation, the first adapter cable that we can now use is then, of course, our adapter cable to the CE red 16 amp socket. So whenever you find a smaller socket, you can just do the adaptation and connect your Wattpilot to that socket. Yeah, the second adapter is then this adapter to the CE blue. This is the cover socket that you can see in the picture down below. So even you can charge single phase with the Wattpilot. When you find a single phase socket, you can also connect to it. And the last part is then, of course, the Schuko adapter set. So whenever you find a Schuko socket or you want to charge with a Schuko socket, this is also not a problem. You can just do the adaptation from the 32 amp CE red to the Schuko socket. We have now a very specific functionality to make sure that you don't overcharge the plugs. So therefore, we have installed in the 22 kilowatt device, we have installed a read contact. And that read contact makes sure that whenever you plug in an adapter of the Fronius adapter set, that the charging current of the wallbox is limited to 16 amps. So this should avoid overpower on these sockets, so that you can't charge with 32 amps at the 16 amp socket. Therefore, the Wattpilot is automatically reduced to these 16 amps and make sure that there is no overpower on these sockets. So this is true for all the three adapters with the 22 kilowatt set. So whenever you connect a 32 amp socket, you are limited then to 16 amps. However, of course, for the Schuko socket, for the normal household plugs, we recommend to also further reduce the charging current. So in this case, it is a good idea, for example, to reduce the charging current down to 10 amps. And of course, this is a very easy solution. All you need to do is to press a long press on the button on the Wattpilot, and therefore you can reduce the charging power. So the second adapter device is then the adapter set for the 11 kilowatt device, and therefore you can do the adaptation similar to the 22 kilowatt device, but in this case now from the 16 amp plug on the 11 kilowatt device to the 32 amp plug where you find at the infrastructure side. So therefore you can do the adaptation from the 16 amp to the 32 amp. Of course, you can do the direct connection at the 16 amp CE red plug. And then you can do the adaptation, of course, again to single phase to the CE blue plug. So here you have the Kara socket, and then of course you can also adapt to the Schuko adapter. So there you see, wherever you go with your Wattpilot Go, you have the possibility to plug in, and whatever socket you find there, you have the possibility to do the adaptation. Okay, next up, I want to speak about the limiting factors for your charging power. As you know, we have now 3 different variants from the Wattpilot, and they have different power classes. But these power classes that are not the only limiting factor for the actual charging power that the customer can reach at home. So therefore, we have 4 different parameters, 4 different factors that get into the account for charging power. So first of all, of course, the charging power that you can reach is limited by the supply line or by the fuse protection of the household. So depending on what supply line or fuse protection you're using in the household, this limits, of course, your charging power that you can reach with the Wattpilot. Second is then, of course, the power of the charging station. So depending if you're using a charging station with 11 kilowatt or one with 22 kilowatts, this depends on how fast the customer can charge at home. The third factor is then our used type 2 cable. So depending on what type 2 cable you are using, this limits again the factor how fast you can charge and with what charging power you can charge. So imagine there are different charging cables out there with the type 2 topology. There is always encoding with the charging amperage. So for example, there are charging cables, they can be operated with 16 amps, for example, and then there are charging cables, they can be operated with 32 amps. So depending on what charging cable, what type 2 cable you are using, this again limits your charging power. And of course, one of the most important factors is the onboard charger of the car. So within every car, there is an onboard charger included, and this onboard chargers now delivers the AC power that comes from the grid into DC power that is needed by the battery of the electric vehicle. And this onboard charger is built in the electric vehicle, and depending on what onboard charger is implemented in the car, that determines your charging speed at home. So for example, there are different cars. For example, there's a car that can only charge on 1 phase, and then there are cars they can charge on 2 phase, and even there are cars they can charge on 3 phase. So this is the best solution in this case, because then you can achieve a very high power for charging. And of course, the weakest part in that chain then determines what's my maximum charging power. So in this case, for example, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense to install a 22 kilowatt device of charging, when you only can charge a single phase car. So when you have no possibility to reach these 22 kilowatts, this is always limited, for example, by the onboard charger of the car, or by the Type 2 charging cable that you use, or for example, by the supply line or fuse connection of the household. So please always keep that in mind when installing the solution at a customer site. Please always keep in mind the supply line, the fuse protection, the used Type 2 cable that the customer uses, and of course, the onboard charger, so what car should be charged. Okay, and for the Wattpilot supply line, so when installing the Wattpilot, please make sure that you always have a RCD Type A within the installation. This should be RCD Type A with 30 milliamps. And then plus to that, you need a circuit breaker in the supply line of the Wattpilot. So whenever you install a new supply line for the Wattpilot, please make sure to have the RCD and the circuit breaker included. Positive side is we only need these components. So there is no RCD Type B necessarily for the Wattpilot, because this detection for DC currents, this is already included in the Wattpilot. So there the Wattpilot makes everything right. He has already included the DC connection inside, and therefore only components that you need for installing is the RCD Type A, 30 milliamps, and the circuit breaker. So when you have that already installed in your household, you are good to go and can easily connect the Wattpilot to the infrastructure. Okay, next up is the functionality of the Wattpilot. And this topic I like the most because the Wattpilot really has some cool functionality that we can use. And with that functionality, we can make sure that the car is always charged at the cheapest possible rate. And I think this is what we all want to make sure. We want to make sure that we can charge our cars with cheapest possible energy so that we can drive with a very cheap way. And therefore, best thing to drive down the charging costs, of course, is with PV surplus energy. And to make sure that you can easily implement the Fronius Wattpilot into an existing PV system, of course, we have made sure that this is a very easy solution, that you can just use the Wattpilot as a plug and play device. And therefore, of course, it is not a problem to implement the Fronius Wattpilot into an existing Fronius system. So all you need basically for implementation is, of course, your Fronius inverter with the PV generator. Then we have, as always, our Fronius smart meter at the feeding point. So the smart meter is now used for visualization and monitoring of the whole system. And then all you need to do is to bring in the Fronius Wattpilot on the AC side. So just connect it to the AC side, and then you are good to go and can instantly charge the car. The communication to the Fronius inverter is now done with the Wi-Fi connection. So whenever you want to connect the Wattpilot with your inverter, let's say you want to charge with PV surplus energy, please make sure that you have a Wi-Fi signal in your garage. Of course, you can also use a repeater to bring the Wi-Fi into the garage. So make sure that you have some Wi-Fi connection in your garage. Then the communication between the Fronius inverter and the Wattpilot is done by our Fronius Solar API standard. So all the communication, the exchange of the power and the PV surplus energy is then done via the Wi-Fi connection, via the internet connection with the Solar API standard. And this system can be built, of course, with our existing Fronius inverters. So all the Fronius inverters you find actually out there on the market, you can use. So of course, our Fronius Snap Inverter series can be used, as well as our Fronius Gen 24 Plus series can be used to implement the Fronius Wattpilot easily. So they are, of course, implemented. And then we have some further features for the Wattpilot. And therefore, as I said before, we have two different kinds of theft protection. So we have these cable lock functions to make sure even if you install the Wattpilot at the public place, this is not a problem. Second feature is then our phase and voltage test. And I think this is a very vital functionality, because with the phase and voltage test, you can make sure, of course, first of all, about that every phase is present, and therefore no damage can be done to the electric car. And another very important feature is, of course, that the customer can instantly check the power that he is charging with directly on the Fronius Solar Wattpilot app. So most of the electric car nowadays, they don't give you information what's the actual charging power they are charging with. And therefore, with our phase and voltage detection, you can instantly check the power that the car charges with directly on the app. And I think this is a very smooth and a very easy way of visualization of the charging process that the customer can instantly watch his charging powers. Yeah, then of course the failure current protection. As I said, already implemented in the Go variant, there is a 30 milliamps AC detection, as well as for both devices, there is a 6 milliamp DC detection integrated. So therefore, no upstream RCD type 2 is required. And as you know, the RCD type 2 can be very expensive. And therefore, the Wattpilot does everything right. He has already integrated that RCD type B functionality in it, and therefore you don't need to install it extra. Yeah, and last but not least, of course, the personalized access via the RFID ID chips. So therefore, even if more people are charging their cars with one stationary Wattpilot, for example, you can easily give them access with the Fronius ID chips. So therefore, up to 10 RFID chips can be implemented in one Fronius Wattpilot. Okay, next topic is now the charging with the Fronius Wattpilot. And I think these are two very basic and very important features that the Wattpilot offers, is of course the different charging possibilities that we have. So first of all, when charging with the Fronius Wattpilot, the easiest thing to do is just to plug in the Wattpilot and therefore make sure that we can charge the car instantly. So here we have now our button on the Fronius Wattpilot itself. And with that button, you can instantly change the current that you want to charge. So here we see our LED ring. And with this LED ring, we can visualize the amperage that is charged with. So every single LED stands for 1 amperage of charging power. So whenever the customer approaches the Wattpilot, he can instantly change the current for charging. So all you need to do is press on the button for long, and therefore you can instantly change the amperage with the Wattpilot for its charging. So therefore every LED stands for 1 amp, and therefore you can instantly change the settings on the Wattpilot itself. So for easy charging, this is of course a very basic functionality and a very important functionality. When the customer doesn't want to use PV surplus energy, for example, he just wants to plug in and charge his car. Of course, this is not a problem. Just plug it in, choose your current that you want to charge with, and you can instantly start the charging process. So this is not a problem. When the charging process now starts, you see the LED ring goes round, and therefore this is the signal that the charging process has started. Okay, so therefore for the charging process, this is a very easy process. And of course, you can configure the amperage of your charging process directly in the app. So therefore, you can define the charging amps directly in the app. So the second possibility is then the charging with variable energy tariffs. And with that variable energy tariffs, it is a very easy solution for make sure that only cheap energy from the grid is used for charging up the electric vehicle. So therefore, for now, we have implemented 2 variable energy tariffs. So they are green energy tariffs. So only green power, only renewable power is used for charging the electric vehicle. I think this is a very important functionality. And therefore, you can just simply set a threshold. So your threshold for charging the electric vehicle. So for example, you can define that only when the energy tariff from the grid is cheaper than your threshold that you set. So for example, you set 5 cents of energy tariff, then the Wattpilot will get the information directly from the exchange and from the internet, and therefore the Wattpilot knows the prices for the next 24 hours. So whenever the energy from the grid is cheap, then the Wattpilot will start the charging and will make sure that only the car is charged when there is cheap available energy from the grid. So this functionality is possible in Germany with our Fronius Lumina Strom tariff, and it is possible in Austria with the Avatar hourly tariff. So these tariffs can be easily implemented within the Fronius Solar Wattpilot app, and you can instantly configure them in the app directly. The second possibility is then the PV surplus charging. And of course, since we are Fronius, this is a very vital functionality for us, that we can instantly charge our PV surplus energy within the Fronius Wattpilot. And one specialty, one very unique feature of the Wattpilot now is that we have a full automatic switchover from single-phase charging to three-phase charging. So this switchover happens full automatically. The customer doesn't have to do anything for that. And the big advantage for that switchover is, of course, now that you can use your full power scale from the PV generator. So in this case, you can charge with powers from 1.38 kilowatts. So this is single phase charging with 6 amps. And you can charge up all the way to 22 kilowatts of power. So therefore, with this automatic switchover, it is a very easy way to make sure that the full broad of your PV system is used and you can use the full power length. So why should we now change the phases during charging, you may ask? First of all, of course, we are very flexible with that. So with single phase charging, we can start the charging process with as little as 1.38 kilowatts. So you can charge with 6 amps of charging power. This is the minimal current that the car needs for starting the charging process. So therefore, we can then regulate up to 32 amps. So the customer can then follow the sun curve, so to say. So whenever there's more PV surplus energy, the Wattpilot can take that energy. Yeah, and then you see the first problem. When you only charge single or three phase, then you are bound to that limitation. So for example, if you only charge on single phase, you can only charge from 1.38 kilowatts up to 7 kilowatts. And of course, if you have a bigger PV system, let's say you have a 10 or 15 kilowatt peak system, of course, you also want to make sure that you can use that surplus power that comes down from the system. And therefore, our Wattpilot can automatically switch over from single phase to three phase, or even to two phases when you're using a car that charges on two phases, and therefore make sure that the switchover happens, and then you can charge on three phase, for example, with 4 kilowatts, and then go all the way up to 22 kilowatts. So therefore, you can make sure to use all that power that comes down from the PV system. On the other hand side, if you use only a three-phase system, then the negative side is that you need at least 4 kilowatts of surplus energy that charging starts. So therefore, when you have a smaller PV system, of course, you always want to use that single-phase charging too. And therefore, this 1 to 2 three-phase charging switchover is very important key fact of the Wattpilot. And this is also what makes him very unique. So therefore, you can regulate the possibilities. You can charge on the single phase with 230 watts, and then you can regulate also to 690 watts of charging power. Of course, you can use this 6 amps as you want to. So if you have a car that needs more amps to charge to start the charging process, you can easily configure that in the app. Okay, and then we have, of course, our Fronius Wattpilot charging modes, and therefore I want to ask my colleague Hans to go through the charging modes with you.
Thank you, Michael. I'll take over to these charging modes now. So what's going on in detail with these when you select these charging modes, these specific charging modes? First, what happens if we go to the Eco mode? Eco mode is the first one when you press the button once. When you see the LED, the first LED is on, then the charging will start immediately after we have enough surplus energy available. So minimum usually 1.4 kilowatt. When this is available, the charging will be started. Take the energy, the surplus energy from my PV system. This happens as long as we have energy from our PV system, or maybe the battery is full, then of course it will be stopped. In this case, for example, we have here the charging till about 7:30. Then the PV power is too low and the battery will not be charged anymore. But then additionally, if we have these avatar or Lumina tariff, we can also charge at nighttime at low energy tariffs. So this will happen again after a certain threshold. If this is below this threshold, we then will start again the charging process at night, probably. Of course, in your countries, when you have no tariff, no avatar tariff, then this will not start again. So it will only charge from PV surplus energy. The second possibility is then the next trip mode. The next trip mode, so when I press once again, you see the second LED is on, then the charging process will also come from the PV system, first of all, and then stop again at about 7:30, 8 o'clock. But then additionally come back at night till a certain time which you have set. So probably, for example, you would like to leave tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. and you need the car charged for a driving distance of, let's say, 200 kilometers. Then you can select this 200 kilometers and the car will be charged once again to make sure that you have your car charged accordingly. So basically we try to do that as well from a PV system. But you know, some days will probably be not sunny enough, so you don't have enough energy from the PV system. And then this night charging is important. And that therefore we have this next trip mode. My opinion, it's also very often the winter period where you use the energy then from nighttime because you have probably not enough from daytime from the PV system. And the eco mode is the one to save money and to charge your car only with PV power or very low energy tariffs. So these are the two possibilities we can offer, and the customer can choose whatever he prefers. Now to the Fronius Solar Wattpilot app. This app is available as of market start. As soon as we have the Wattpilot available, you can download these free of charge from the iOS or Android mobile phones. And with this app, you can see, first of all, what's going on. You see the charging, you see how much power comes from PV from the grid. And you can also select here do some special settings, especially for the commissioning. As you know, it's good to bring your system online. And of course, for that, you need the app as well. So these two things are here important. I have more details here. So you see on the left picture, this is the starting page where you see how much power is charged at the moment, how much comes from PV and from the grid. And on the right-hand side, you see the same on the second page with the details about the charging power and so on. On the settings, you will then find more about that, and I will come back to the next slide, because of course you may ask what happens if I have a battery, and what happens if I have a Fronius Wattpilot in the system as well, because of course then we have three parts to regulate according to the surplus energy. So who comes first? And therefore we have these certain priorities. So basically, first of all, we need the Fronius smart meter at the feeding point. That's clear. And together with the Fronius Gen 24 Plus inverter or snap inverter, we communicate and we detect the surplus energy. And this surplus energy then can go first to the battery, for example, up to a certain percentage. This percentage can be selected in the Wattpilot app. So I can select, for this example, 20%, which means the battery will first be charged to 20%. Second, when you have a Fronius Wattpilot as well, you can select here also a certain minimum temperature which you would like to reach. So the hot water should be at a minimum temperature 20 degrees or 40 degrees, whatever. That means, second, the Wattpilot will get his energy to produce hot water. And then this are the settings in the inverter. So these settings can be done in the inverter, basically watt priority, battery, or Fronius Wattpilot. And the other priority, the Fronius Wattpilot, can be set in the app with the SOC value of the battery and the temperature in the hot water tank. So both can be selected, and of course, whatever you need, you can get your best settings. Basically, with the battery, of course, it's also possible to charge your car at nighttime with your battery. Therefore, it's just important to know that, of course, you need to know your daily driving distance. And if you have very long distances, the battery will need to have a very high capacity. So therefore, it would make probably not too much sense to do that. For smaller distances, it's fine to have a part of the energy coming as well from the battery. And if a customer is only arriving in the evening, then of course he would also like to use his PV power, and therefore a battery can be useful. Good. This is about the priorities, and you see here as well in the settings you can first of all on the left hand side you see the load management priorities, settings, battery, on-pilot or load management. So here you can select the first priority in the inverter. And second, the settings on the Wattpilot. If you go to settings, you will find current level, the next trip, at what time do I need to have what driving distance. And under point cost optimization, this is the third point, you will find then the battery threshold and the on-pilot threshold, which can be set here to a certain level. So here with that you do your settings. If you need more details to the Wattpilot app, I would like to ask you to join one of our next trainings. We have an online training available very soon in a few weeks, where we explain the app settings in detail. And here we go to all the points which can be adjusted. Usually you don't need to do too much, but on the specific settings, probably you can do some improvements as well. Good. Now, the availability and timeline, very important. Basically, the country availability is in more or less whole Europe. As you see the countries, all the red countries, we will be certified with the Wattpilot. And the product will be available as of May 2021. So in about 1.5 months, you will be able to order that. Possibly you can order it earlier at your distributor, but the delivery will come then in May. Yeah, please, for further information, feel free to go to our homepage or to visit our online trainings for e-mobility and heating solutions, which we will offer on our webpage coming very soon in a few weeks. If you need contact details, please go also to our homepage and contact us if you have any further questions. There's also information about the Wattpilot, the data sheet available on the homepage, and you can also get further brochures and information. Yeah, so the Wattpilot, perfect to be used for PV surplus charging. Also, this automatic switch over single phase to three phase, I think, is a very important feature, which is really good, helpful for the smaller and bigger PV systems. And with the Fronius Wattpilot, you charge on your terms, and this is the nice thing about it. It's easy and it's really doing whatever you want to have. What's your requirements? So good, Michael. I think we are at the end of this presentation, and I would now, before we end up, continue with some more questions. We have received many questions. I've just got few in the beginning, and I would like to ask you that now, Michael. Maybe you can answer. The first question was, can we use multiple Wattpilot parallel in one PV system?
Yeah,
is that a possibility?
Of course, this is a very specific possibility, and of course, this is very important. So, of course, you can use as many Wattpilots in one system as you want to. So, for only charging the electric vehicles, you can install multiple Wattpilots in one system. However, please note, for the PV surplus charging, you can always use one Wattpilot at a time. So you always configure one Wattpilot at the PV surplus charging, and then of course for just charging with the Wattpilot you can implement as many Wattpilots as you want. So whenever, for example, you use the flexible energy tariffs, you can use multiple Wattpilots and charge your electric vehicles as cheap as possible. But for PV surplus charging, only one Wattpilot is possible.
Perfect. Second question was, is the RCD type A or B always required or needed?
So the RCD type A is required in this case. So in the installation, when you do the installation for the Wattpilot, all you need is the RCD type A with 30 milliamps and the circuit breaker. Besides that, you don't need a RCD type B because this direct current detection is already included in the Wattpilot. So even if you connect it to one plug, you don't have to worry about direct current failures because this detection is already implemented in the Wattpilot device. So therefore, I think the Wattpilot makes everything right. Give you the free of choice wherever you want to plug in. Just make sure to have a standard AC installation, and therefore you are free to go plug in wherever you want to and charge your electric vehicle.
Okay, great. Next question was, which inverters can be connected to the Wattpilot?
Of course, this is a most question asked, and therefore, of course, our Snap inverter series is possible to connect to the Wattpilot, and the Gen 24 Plus series is used to connect to the Wattpilot. So with all our current Fronius setup of inverters, you can easily implement the Wattpilot, and of course this is also a plug-and-play solution. So whenever you connect the Wattpilot the first time to this Wi-Fi network where the Fronius inverter is already integrated, then there is an automatic detection and an automatic connection to the inverter. So whenever you plug in the Wattpilot the first time, bring it to the Wi-Fi, then the Fronius inverter is automatically searched. The Wattpilot automatically recognizes the Fronius inverter, and all you need to do basically is start charging with PV surplus energy.
And is this also possible with other inverter brands? So actually from competitors?
Yeah, in this case, for now it's not tested. So for now, the Fronius Wattpilot is included for the Fronius Gen 24 Plus and for the Fronius Snap inverter series.
Okay, and then a last question was about the cars. Are all electric cars possible to be charged with the Wattpilot?
Yeah, for sure. So within our Fronius Wattpilot app, we have also a list of cars that you can choose with. So whenever you find your car in that list, just select that car out of the list, and then the Wattpilot is automatically configured to the right settings that fits your car. So for example, there are some cars they sleep away, so to say, after charging stops. So when you use the PV surplus functionality, for example, and you have PV surplus in the morning, and then during lunch there is no PV surplus energy anymore, and then in the afternoon you want to start again, so there is again PV surplus energy, and then the car sleeps. And with other charging stations there is no wake up available. But we have a wake up functionality, so we have a simulate unplug functionality within the Wattpilot, and with that functionality the Wattpilot simulates to the car that it is plugged in and out again, and therefore all the cars start charging again. So no matter what car you're using, the Wattpilot can handle it and also wakes up your car again. So please make sure to just set the right car, just choose it from the list. And if you don't find your car in the list, then you have just chosen a very good car, because then you don't have any problems with charging, and you can just immediately charge your car.
Yeah, last one more question arrived. What happens with the standard 230 volt sockets. When I charge my car on a standard socket, 230 volts, you know, the Schuko sockets, is there anything to take care about that, or how can we limit the power with that?
So first of all, as we told in the webinar, we have the read contact in the adapter set. So whenever you connect your Wattpilot 22 kilowatts to a Schuko adapter, then the charging power is automatically limited to 16 amps of charging power. But of course, for Schuko socket, for normal household plugs, we recommend to further limit the charging power. So for example, for Schuko socket, it will be a good idea to limit the charging current to 8 amp or for example to 10 amp to not overload these plugs. And therefore, it is always a good idea to further limit the charging current. And this can be very easily done just by clicking a long push on the button. And therefore, you can just alternate the current, reduce it further to 10 amps, for example, and then you can make sure to not overload your electric plugs at home.
Okay, great, Michael. I think this was a few of your questions. I've seen there are many more, but I've also seen that Leo and Marcus helping us, and they are also answering sometimes the questions for everybody. So this is public then for everybody who is in the webinar. So that's good too. Yeah, basically, I think we will continue with your questions now, Michael. From that point of view, we would like to thank you for your participation. I hope this was interesting for you. I hope you can also use the Wattpilot very soon and maybe join us at one of our next trainings here. And I would like to thank you again and have a good day. Enjoy your time. Stay healthy. And yeah, how do you say?
And of course, I hope you get some information from us from our launch event. I hope you enjoyed the product as much as we do. You see, we are very excited about the new product. We are very excited about the Wattpilot. So we are very looking forward to this product, and I hope you do the same. And of course, make sure to order the Wattpilot of one of our wholesalers. They have already implemented the prices and have information for you. So in this case, I hope you enjoyed our launch event with our Wattpilot. And in this case, stay healthy and keep charging.
Okay.
See you the next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.